Welcome to Nasdaq TradeTalks, where we meet with the top thought leaders and strategists in emerging technologies, digital assets, and regulatory landscape and capital markets. I'm your host, Jill Malandrino, and joining me on the desk at the Nasdaq market site, we have Alex Rich, Vice President of Sales at GitGuardian, David Schwed, COO of SVRN, Gil Geron, CEO of Orca Security, and Ben Goodman, Head of Identity Security Alliance and Corporate Development at Silverfort. We're here to discuss the cybersecurity challenges with operating non-human identities. Great to have all of you with us. Welcome to Trade Talks. Certainly you can see the exponential challenges that can result from non-human identities. Before we get into the conversation, let's go around the horn quickly. Alex, give us an overview of where GitGuardian is within the cybersecurity space.
Sure, so currently we are the market leader in the secret security space. So we help companies detect and remediate exposed secrets across code, productivity tools, and the public domain. And back in April, we launched our NHI governance product that extends those value props to help companies mismanage, detect, remediate non-human identities.
Yeah, and tell us about SVRN.
Yeah, SVRN is building privacy-preserving AI infrastructure.
And Gil, Orca Security?
Orca protects public clouds and data centers, so everything that is basically hosted in AWS, Azure, GCP, Ali Cloud, Oracle Cloud, whether it's data, identity, AI, anything that is hosted there for vulnerabilities, malwares, and misconfigurations, we help companies protect.
Yeah, and Ben, finally, some background on Silverfort.
So Silverfort provides the leading identity security platform. So our platform secures identity infrastructure, everything from multi-factor authentication to NHI to cloud security to AI security. We secure it all very much from an identity point of view.
Right, so Ben, let's put this into some sort of context here.
Sure.
What's the scale of the problem as we understand NHI now?
One of the problems is that this is a problem that's really been proliferating for decades now. And so we go all the way back to Active Directory service accounts that have been proliferating for years. And what we've seen is that as many as 40% of NHIs that are out there today are ungoverned, meaning people don't know they're there, they don't have an owner, they don't know the life cycle of it. And so it really becomes an issue where security people know there's this ungoverned part of their infrastructure and they want to get their arms around it.
Yeah, well, Gil, I would imagine that the bad actors understand this as well.
Absolutely. I think that the point that was mentioned is more around scale. What we are seeing is that there is 50-to-1 ratio of identities being used by machines versus humans, which means that when you're trying to secure your environments, you're going to find 50 times more issues if you're talking about usage of identity of secrets, usage of identity by API keys, using identity by agentic AI. So the need to secure that environment becomes a scale issue and not just something that you used to from all the infrastructure that was legacy.
Yeah, and David, do you think that cybersecurity teams, the C-suite, the board, understand the scope? Are they investing in resources for cyber?
I think they understand the scope. I would say that they're not increasing the budgets to tackle the problem. I think that a lot of organizations' velocity is what's most important to them from an engineering perspective, and this unfortunately slows down some of that velocity, so there's not a lot of attention at the moment given to NHIs.
Yeah, I think the challenge with that balance is, I don't know, it's going to come to roost at some point, right? I think that could be very short-term thinking in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, we're living in a world where identity represents the new perimeter, right? The networks, the firewalls that form the traditional perimeter, the walled garden, they've been rendered ineffective by the mass adoption of cloud and of SaaS, right? And to your point, we're living in a world where organizations almost immediately lose sight of these NHIs, which are outnumbering human identities 50-to-1, I hear 100-to-1, 145-to-1, whatever it may be. So it's a massive attack surface. And the other thing that I think is worth bringing up is it's highly exploitable, right? We don't have the additional layers of security that we enjoy in human identities like MFA. And the other thing that's worth calling out is, unlike a traditional exploit, you don't need to be a sophisticated hacker to take advantage of an NHI. We like to say when a bad actor gets their hand on NHIs, they don't have to breach a company, they simply log in.
Yeah, I mean, you could also make the argument that with good actors, it might not be anything associated with malintent. They're just checking out these new tools that might not even recognize that they're putting something that's classified as confidential or just hasn't even been labeled yet. And I think part of the challenge as well is this rush for internal and external product to get out there, and these gaps and vulnerabilities can be exposed. And with non-human identities, how do you even identify where the problem's coming from?
Well, yeah, I mean, 100%. I think one of the biggest challenges that we see is you've got the unknown about the unknown, and then the known, the unknown of the known. So in the former category, there are tons of NHIs that are getting created through non-sanctioned processes, right? So out of the gate, the organization is completely blind to the permissions, the life cycle, all the things you need to manage when it comes to identity, and even when it comes to the things that are being created through sanctioned processes. Governance is transient, right? People lose sight almost immediately, so you find yourself in the same position.
Yeah, and Ben, when you think of it in that context and you're creating these blind spots, it's even faster than teams can adapt. Like incident response plans haven't even caught up to this yet.
Well, I think another thing to think about is the fact that a lot of cases these NHIs may actually be over-provisioned. So they have more rights than an average person. And that's why they tend to be one of the key targets for these attackers, because they know A, they're highly exploitable, as David said, and then B, once they do exploit them, they have a level of privilege which allows them to do really dangerous things. And so now when we talk about incident response and how do we actually deal with it, in many cases, people become aware of an incident because they see unusual behavior for a particular identity. Well, if there's no one governing, no one managing, no one who has ownership over an NHI, to be able to even detect it, to do an incident response is really an issue. And so we're really talking about this piece of the ecosystem, this piece of the environment, which is hidden attack surface that people don't even know exists. And that's really scary.
Yeah, it certainly is. Gil, if I was a CISO, I would be losing sleep.
I think it's something that should definitely be on the mindset of the CEOs, because every company in the world is concerned about how they increase their velocity, how they deliver more product to market. And with the opportunity at hand of increasing your velocity, deploying more services, using AI to accelerate your adoption of technology, you're creating more identities.
Yeah.
And but if you're running that unmanaged and slowing the velocity down, then there's an impact on your business.
Yeah.
And so this is why I think CEOs and CISOs are much more focused today in making sure that they're deploying fast, but deploying it right.
Right, right. And I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, there's this crazy balancing act that CISOs and security people have. They don't want to be the people that are known as the ones that say no to everything. And especially now with AI, there's such a push for velocity, as Gil was saying. And so how do you balance between being an enabling technology that allows people to move quickly, but also do it securely? And those things are often at odds with each other. And that's the kind of thing I think that really keeps the CISO up at night.
Yeah, I would agree with you.
Like piggybacking off that trend, right, and that comment, like think about one of the most popular agentic use cases right now is in coding, right? Coding assistants, Cursor, Copilot. They're phenomenal because they give us the potential to dramatically increase developer velocity and productivity, but they also create an opportunity to drastically increase risk, because if you think about it, a coding agent is going to reproduce the thing that it's trained on. If we are trading coding agent on insecure code with exposed secrets, guess what? They're going to end up exposing more secrets faster than any human developer ever could.
Yeah, and David, I would piggyback on Ben's point as well. You also have to figure your regulatory and compliance issues as well within that balance of cybersecurity, product out to the street, and compliance. Because the thing is, you don't want it to feel like anti-innovation, but pro-responsible innovation.
Yeah, I wouldn't look for the regulators to be the answers to the problem. Regulators, are typically not very prescriptive or proscriptive when they're putting out, the rules and regulations. It's really more principle-based. So, again, least privileges and make sure you have the proper monitoring and incident response, in place. So I think it's really on the industry to self-govern, and it's really on the industry to kind of set those proper frameworks and industry best practices when it comes to how do you deal with non-human identities. So I think the regulation is going to be, more forward-looking, I guess, in some respect.
Yeah.
Yep.
Ben, as it relates to M&A, is this a new category, right? Are we at that point yet when we're thinking about non-human identities, agentic AI, and so forth?
Yeah, I think what we're seeing is we saw, first of all, you can tell there's a lot of interest in an area because you see a bunch of VC money and you see a bunch of little startups pop up to try to address the problem. And I think one of the things that the industry tends to sort out over time is whether something is a feature of a larger platform or whether it is in itself a platform. And our point of view is that we believe that customers want a platform. They want things that are integrated, that have a large quantity of features. And I would expect things like NHI security and AI security to over time kind of merge into larger platforms, which will be M&A opportunities for the platform providers, and will allow for us to grow and move faster.
Yeah.
So I think it's exciting if you're an investor in that space, that your investment may be a good acquisition target. And I think if you believe in the value of platforms, I think there's also a great story in terms of how those features end up making their way in the platforms.
Yeah, Gil, I would also argue too that there are so many vendors out there now. And that's another factor that CISOs and security teams are factoring in, because of course it does expand your attack surface or your vulnerabilities.
We are seeing huge surge of consolidations in security.
Yeah.
The understanding that, and consolidation is not consolidation of your billing. It's consolidation of your platform, consolidation of your data to make the right decisions.
Right.
And what identity brings to the market is also an opportunity to really move from only having zero trust to also have least privilege, zero trust access to your data.
Yeah.
And to do that and to do it right, you have to have a platform. You need to make the right decisions, and you need to be able to audit, log, and view the type of access that your services that are deployed are performing. That's why a platform is a must at this stage.
I agree with you on that, but I think part of the problem as a former CISO is you're really kind of shifting the attack surface for the threat actor. So if I have zero standing privileges and now I have a mechanism that is going to be granting based on context of the call, that's just where I'd be focusing my attention as an attacker. So I think in some respects there's a ton of answers to the problem, but as a CISO and as like a red team, we're now expanding these the targets, if you will, of the threat actors.
Yeah. You know what's interesting though? AI, one of the pitches with it is efficiency and getting companies to not operate in silos, so you have more of a bird's eye view, if you will.
Right.
But it still seems to be that we fall into the traps of operating in silos. That's a challenge.
It's 100% a challenge, and I think in a lot of respects, AI is kind of driving a massive proliferation in the attack surface that is created by NHIs. You talked about 50 to 1, I'm hearing 100 to 1, I'm hearing 145 to 1, regardless of what statistic you subscribe to. If you kind of take a step and think about AI, specifically agentic AI, in a lot of respects, NHIs are essentially the lifeblood of it. It's what makes it work, right? The more agentic we insert into an organization, the greater the number of NHIs they're going to have to look after. And a lot of the other use cases that we're seeing, we talked about code agents, but think about just AI agents being placed in productivity tools or data sources. In scenarios where these tools or data sources have exposed NHIs in them, well, those agents, when they interact with that data, they're sending them back to a model provider. You don't know if that model provider adheres to your governing principles and your risk practices. So in a lot of respects, AI is increasing the number of NHIs that you're responsible for and simultaneously sending them out of the estate to a place that you don't really have a lot of visibility into. So there's some real risk there.
I think another interesting thing with when you're looking at agents, traditional NHIs are very predictable, right? Their behavior is deterministic. It's usually set up to do something at a particular time, at a particular interval. And so you can kind of tell when it's behaving and when it's misbehaving. Right. All of a sudden we bring in agents. Now they're non-deterministic. Now they're going to learn. Their behavior is going to change over time. And so a lot of the traditional tools, or even some of the newer tools that were designed to address NHI security, are going to have to evolve pretty rapidly to deal with this new agentic world. And so, it's very tempting to say, oh, agents are just another NHI, because they are a non-human identity. But they behave much different than the NHIs we've been working on for the last couple of years. And so we as an industry are going to have to evolve very, very quickly to be able to get our arms around this rapidly proliferating estate.
Yeah, well, let's talk about solutions for a moment then. Mm-hmm. Do security teams have the skill set? Because they're going to have to reskill, I would imagine, to adapt as well. And for companies overall to understand this operational risk. So let's think about this in the context of, okay, we know what the issue is. What do solutions look like?
Yeah, I think first of all, let's look at identifying the problem. It's the old knowing you have a problem is the first step towards fixing it. Yep. So tools that do discovery that can allow me to understand what's the breadth of the problem, how many agents are out there, how many NHI identities are out there, being to understand what is out there, where they are. Then understanding how they're privileged, understanding are they acting on behalf of a human, and can I associate that with a human's level of access? Or are they autonomous, where they have their own access, and I need to understand that. And then once I have that, then I can start looking at things like decisioning and enforcement to actually stop where control where they can go, where they can't go, what they can do, what they can't do. And so it's a multi-step process, and most people haven't even taken the first step.
Right, right. I mean, you're talking about, the nuances, Ben, between an agent and NHI. And Alex, I feel as if understanding the terminology and not grouping everything under the same umbrella is a really good place to start as well.
Yeah, I think so. And I think another term that also needs to be clarified is we throw around the term secret. I find that secrets and NHIs tend to be used a little bit interchangeably, and they aren't the same thing, but in a lot of respects, they're completely codependent and intertwined. In a lot of respects, I see the secret as the credential that affords the agent the access to perform the tasks and do the things that it needs to do. And then I look at the agent or the NHI itself, the permissions it has, its responsibilities, its role in an organization is kind of painting the picture of the broader NHI. That the two don't really work without one another. So not the same thing, but you're almost always going to find them together. When you find the secret, you almost always find the agent behind it and understand the things that it does and is responsible for.
Yeah, and you had brought up, David, coding with AI as an example. And for leveraging that and improving efficiencies within coding, what happens if you don't understand how to code from its core? How will you be able to identify when there's malicious code, as an example?
Yeah, I mean, not to be doom and gloom, but I think the problem's actually going to get worse before it gets better. There's so many tools right now that I see engineers that are, simply copying and pasting remediation steps that are, coming out from AI. So what's ended up happening is you have engineers that are not fully understanding the scope of the vulnerabilities, the scope of the problem. They're simply being trained to copy and paste from AI models, so they could be introducing new vulnerabilities. Engineers are not security people, and they're two completely different archetypes, and I think we need to understand and respect that. And I think a lot of organizations, unfortunately, think the answer to security is an engineering.
Yeah, and Gil, that's what's so concerning, because engineers have, one role, developers, sysops, the IT desk, right? And there is a rush to get this innovation out there, and certain teams need different times to do that. So I also think the communication within the teams, the security team, what the board's expecting, what the C-suite is expecting, I think that there really needs to be an effort there to improve that.
I think that communication here is the key for success. It's true that engineers not necessarily are minded towards like what the security goals, like making sure that the service is as secure as our policy and what mandates in order to deploy it securely. But at the same time, it's also the opportunity, because if we are shifting the problem more to the left, more to the code, and make sure that the identities we deploy are more secure, we are managing it, auditing it, and are able to basically, instead of having a whack-a-mole of identities pop up in production, making sure it's managed by code creates a huge opportunity to make sure that it's way more secure than it used to be.
Yeah.
There's a problem of scale here. He talked about 100 to 1, or as more as it will scale by the fact that people are going to deploy more code, more services, faster to do production. It means we need to solve it at the core, have good policies, good controls on what we are deploying, and making sure it's well audited and secure, and it will allow us to increase the velocity.
That's an excellent point, because Alex, you don't want to rush to get product out there, and then all of a sudden all the fail reports start trickling in because teams have this, enormous pressure on them.
It's not only that. I mean, the cost of remediation, the further down the chain you go, is going to go up and up and up. Like, the true solution to this problem is extreme shift left. And we could shift left with agents the same way we do with human developers, right? Instead of letting that agent commit the code and then finding out at a later date that it has an exposed secret or an NHI needing to roll back, there's the business disruption element. We have ways now to sit further left, scan things before they're committed, identify the problem, and prevent it from being a problem before it becomes a problem.
I think an important point here also is we can't expect that either the developer, especially as the developer becomes less sophisticated because they're relying on AI, that they're going to do the right things from a security perspective. And to a certain degree, we have to embed security in the infrastructure itself so that they're able to move quickly, build the code, build the things they need to go, and the infrastructure underneath them is kind of, without them even knowing it, securing what they're doing. Because if we rely on the developer to do that, it's just not going to happen.
But that's a culture thing, in my opinion. Privacy first, cyber first. Again, this is what I cover, and I'm always thinking about it. But it needs to be, whether it's developing models or getting the product out there, the infrastructure underneath, like that, it just needs to be, this is how our company functions. I think it's also going to be a competitive edge, the tighter that your security protocols are. Great conversation. We have to wrap this up. Appreciate everyone's insight. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.